Long ago, the Italian peninsula was home to many different peoples. The Italian peninsula is the land that looks like a long boot on a map of Europe. It goes out into the sea. There are high mountains in the north. There are many hills, rivers, and fields in other parts of the land. The sea was very important for the people there. It gave them fish, places for ships, and ways to meet other peoples. Around 1000 BCE, a group of ancient Italian peoples came south from the north. One group was called the Latins. The Latins lived in the middle part of the Italian peninsula. Their land was called Latium. The Latins were farmers. They grew food, kept animals, and lived in small towns and villages. They spoke a language called Latin. Later, Latin became very important because the people of Rome used it. The Latins lived near the Tiber River. The Tiber River was not very large, but it was useful. People could get water from it. They could grow food near it. They could also use it to move goods by boat. The river was close to the sea, but it was not too close. This was good, because people could trade with others, but they were also safer from attacks from the sea. Near the Tiber River, small villages grew. Over time, these villages came together and became one city-state. This city-state was called Rome. A city-state is a city and the land around it. It has its own people, laws, leaders, and army. Rome began as a small city-state, but it later became one of the greatest powers in the ancient world. Rome was built on hills. The hills helped the people protect their homes. If enemies came, people could see them from high places. The Tiber River also helped Rome. It gave Rome water and a way to trade. Rome was in a good place between the north and the south of the Italian peninsula. This place later helped Rome grow strong. At first, Rome was ruled by kings. A king was one man who had great power. He gave orders, led the army, and made important choices for the city. Rome had several kings in its early days. Some of these kings were Etruscans. The Etruscans were an old people of the Italian peninsula. They lived mainly in the area now called Tuscany, north of Rome. The Etruscans had strong cities, rich farms, and good trade. They knew how to build roads, walls, temples, and drains. They were more developed than many other peoples in Italy at that time. The Etruscans had a strong effect on early Rome. Romans learned many things from them. They learned about building, trade, religion, and city life. The Etruscans also had kings who ruled Rome for a time. Under Etruscan kings, Rome became a larger and stronger city. But many Romans did not want to be ruled by a king forever. They did not want one family to have all the power. They were also angry with the last Etruscan king. In 509 BCE, the Romans drove out the Etruscan king. They said that Rome would no longer have a king. After 509 BCE, Rome changed from a monarchy to a republic. A monarchy is a government led by a king or queen. A republic is a government in which public matters are not controlled by one king. In a republic, some men are chosen to lead for a short time. Rome's republic was not a full democracy like some Greek city-states. Still, it was a new kind of government for Rome. The Romans were very afraid of kings after 509 BCE. They thought that a king might become cruel and take too much power. So they made rules to stop one man from becoming too strong. Important jobs were often held for only 1 year. Also, more than one man often shared power. In the Roman Republic, there were different social groups. The two main groups were the patricians and the plebeians. The patricians were people from old and rich families. Many patricians had land, money, and strong family names. They had more rights and more power in the early republic. The plebeians were the common people of Rome. They were farmers, workers, shop owners, soldiers, and poor people. Some plebeians had little money. Some plebeians later became rich. However, in the early years of the Republic, plebeians did not have the same political rights as patricians. The patricians held many important public jobs. They led the government, the courts, and the army. They also had much power in religion. The plebeians had to follow laws, pay taxes, and fight in wars, but they could not always help make the laws. This was unfair to many plebeians. Rome had an important office called the consul. The consul was one of the top leaders in the Roman Republic. There were always 2 consuls. This was very important. Rome did not want one man to rule like a king. 2 consuls could watch each other and stop each other from having too much power. A consul served for 1 year. During that year, the consuls led the army and took care of many important state matters. They called meetings, led talks, and made choices for Rome. After 1 year, new consuls were chosen. This short term helped stop the growth of king-like power. The consuls were chosen by the Centuriate Assembly. The Centuriate Assembly was a meeting of Roman citizens. It was linked to the army. Roman men were placed in groups called centuries. The richer groups had more power in the vote than the poorer groups. Because of this, the Centuriate Assembly was not fully fair to all citizens. At first, only patricians could become consuls. This meant that the highest office in Rome was controlled by the upper class. The plebeians could fight for Rome, pay for Rome, and work for Rome, but they could not become consuls. This was one of the reasons why there was a long struggle between patricians and plebeians. Another very important body in Rome was the Senate. The Senate was made up of senators. Many senators were patricians, especially in the early republic. A senator usually stayed in the Senate for life. This gave the Senate great power because senators had long experience in government. The Senate was not exactly the same as a modern parliament. Still, it was very important. It gave advice to the consuls and other public officers. It talked about war, money, land, foreign peoples, and public works. In many cases, the Senate had the real power in Roman politics. The consuls changed every year, but the senators stayed for many years. For this reason, the Senate could guide Rome in a steady way. It could remember old events and old rules. It could make long plans. Many Roman leaders listened to the Senate because it was made up of powerful and experienced men. The Senate was called the highest advisory body of Rome. This means that it gave the most important advice to leaders such as the consuls. In theory, the consuls led the state. In real life, the Senate often guided them. The Senate was especially strong in the early Roman Republic. Rome also had an office called the dictator. The word dictator has a very bad meaning for many people today. Today, a dictator is often a cruel ruler who takes all power and does not let people choose leaders. However, the Roman dictator was different in the early republic. A Roman dictator was chosen only in a great emergency. For example, Rome might face a very dangerous war, an enemy army, or a serious crisis. In such a time, Rome needed one leader who could act quickly. The consuls could name a dictator. The dictator had very great power, but only for a short time. Usually, the dictator could serve for no more than 6 months. When the danger was over, the dictator was expected to give up power. This rule showed that Romans wanted strong leadership in danger, but they still feared permanent king-like power. As Rome fought more wars, the plebeians became more important. Rome needed many soldiers. Most Roman soldiers were citizens. Many of these citizens were plebeians. They left their farms and homes to fight for Rome. They risked their lives for the city-state. The plebeians began to ask a simple question. They said, if we fight for Rome, why do we not have the same rights in Rome? They wanted a voice in government. They wanted fair laws. They wanted protection from rich patricians. They wanted to take part in public life. This long fight for rights is sometimes called the struggle of the orders. The word orders here means social groups. The patricians and plebeians were different social groups. The struggle was not one short event. It continued for many years. The plebeians did not always fight with weapons. They used other ways. They stopped work. They left the city. They refused to serve in the army. Rome needed the plebeians, so these actions were powerful. The plebeians showed that Rome could not live well without them. In the early 5th century BCE, an important event took place. It is called the Sacred Mount event. The plebeians were angry because they had debts and few rights. Many poor plebeians owed money to rich people. If they could not pay, they could lose their land or freedom. The plebeians left Rome and went to a hill called the Sacred Mount. They refused to help the city. This was a serious problem for the patricians. Rome could not defend itself well without plebeian soldiers. The patricians had to listen. In 494 BCE, After the Sacred Mount event, Rome made an important change. It created the office of the tribune of the plebs. The tribune of the plebs was a leader who protected the plebeians. The tribunes were chosen from the plebeians. The tribune of the plebs had a very special power. A tribune could say no to a decision made by the Senate or a consul. This power is called a veto. Veto means I forbid it, or I say no. If a decision hurt the plebeians, a tribune could try to stop it. The veto was very important, because it gave the plebeians a way to protect themselves. Before this, the patricians could often make choices without listening to common people. Now, a tribune of the plebs could stand against powerful leaders. Tribunes of the plebs were seen as sacred. This did not mean that they were gods. It meant that people were not allowed to hurt them. If someone attacked a tribune, that person could face very serious punishment. This protection helped tribunes do their work. At the same time, Rome made the plebeian assembly. The plebeian assembly was made only of plebeians. Patricians were not members. In this meeting, plebeians could talk about their problems and choose their own leaders. At first, the plebeian assembly did not have power over all Romans. Its decisions were mainly for plebeians, but it gave common people an important place to speak and act together. It helped them become a stronger political group. The plebeians also wanted written laws. In the early Roman Republic, many laws were not written down. They were old customs. These customs were known best by patricians and priests. Because the laws were not clear to everyone, patricians could sometimes use them in unfair ways. For example, a patrician judge might say that an old custom meant one thing, while a plebeian thought it meant another thing. The plebeians could not easily check the law because it was not written for all to see. They wanted clear rules. In the middle of the 5th century BCE, Rome made its oldest written law code. It was called the Law of the 12 Tables. The Law of the 12 Tables was written on 12 tables or boards. The Law of the 12 Tables was very important because ordinary people could know the law. They could see the rules and learn what was allowed and what was not allowed. The patricians could no longer keep all legal knowledge for themselves. The Law of the 12 Tables did not make Rome fully fair. Some rules were still hard on poor people. Some rules showed the great power of fathers in Roman families. Some rules were strict and even cruel. Still, the law was an important step because it was written and public. The Law of the 12 Tables covered many parts of daily life. It had rules about family, land, debt, trade, crime, and court cases. It told people what to do when they had a problem with another person. It also told people how courts should work. For the Romans, law became very important. Romans believed that a strong state needed clear laws. They believed that citizens should know the law and follow it. The Law of the 12 Tables became a symbol of Roman justice, even though it was not perfect. The plebeians continued to ask for more rights. One important problem was marriage. At first, patricians and plebeians could not marry each other by law. This rule kept the two groups apart. It also helped patrician families keep their high place in society. The Canulaeus law changed this rule. It allowed marriage between patricians and plebeians. This was an important change. A patrician man and a plebeian woman could marry. A plebeian man and a patrician woman could also marry. The Canulaeus law helped raise the position of the plebeians. Marriage connected families. When patricians and plebeians could marry, the hard wall between the two groups became weaker. It showed that plebeians were also full members of the Roman community. Still, not every plebeian became rich or powerful. Many plebeians remained poor farmers or workers. But some plebeian families became rich. They gained land, money, and friends in government. These rich plebeians wanted access to the highest offices. One of the biggest changes came in 367 BCE. In that year, Rome passed the Licinian-Sextian laws. These laws were named after Licinius and Sextius, two leaders who supported them. The Licinian-Sextian laws changed Roman politics and land rules. One rule said that one of the two consuls had to be chosen from the plebeian class. This was a great victory for the plebeians. Before this law, only patricians could become consul. Now a plebeian could hold the highest regular office in Rome. This did not mean that every plebeian could become consul. Usually, only rich and well-known plebeians had a real chance. Public office needed money, friends, and support. Still, the law opened the door for plebeian leaders. The Licinian Sextian laws also limited how much public land one person could hold. Public land was land taken by Rome in war. It belonged to the Roman state. But rich patricians often used large parts of it for themselves. Poor plebeians needed land to grow food and support their families. If rich people took too much public land, poor people had less chance to live well. The land rule was meant to stop very rich people from taking too much. In real life, it was often hard to make rich people follow land limits. Powerful families had many ways to keep land. Still, the rule showed that land was an important problem in Rome. It also showed that the plebeians wanted not only political rights, but also a fairer share of land. After the Licinian Sextian laws, rich plebeians began to enter the highest offices. They became consuls, senators, and other leaders. Over time, rich patricians and rich plebeians came together as a new ruling group. This new ruling group was called the nobiles. The nobiles were not simply all patricians. They included powerful families from both patrician and plebeian backgrounds. What mattered was wealth, public office, family name, and political power. The nobiles became the leading class of the Roman Republic. They controlled many important offices. They had land, money, soldiers, and friends. They often worked together, even if their families had once been on opposite sides. This change was important. In the early Republic, the main difference was between patricians and plebeians. Later, the difference was often between rich nobiles and ordinary people. A rich plebeian might have more in common with a rich patrician than with a poor plebeian. The struggle between patricians and plebeians continued for a long time. The plebeians won many rights, little by little. They gained tribunes of the plebs. They gained the plebeian assembly. They gained written laws. They gained the right to marry patricians. They gained the right to become consul. The final important step came in 287 BCE. In that year, Rome passed the Hortensian Law. This law was named after Hortensius, a Roman dictator who helped solve a serious problem between the social groups. Before the Hortensian Law, decisions of the plebeian assembly did not always become laws for all Romans. Often the Senate had to approve them. This meant that patrician senators could still stop decisions made by plebeians. The Hortensian Law changed this. It said the decisions of the plebeian assembly would become laws for all Roman citizens, even without approval from the Senate. These decisions were called plebiscites. After the Hortensian Law, a decision made by the plebeian assembly had the force of national law. It was not only a rule for plebeians. It was a law for patricians and plebeians alike. This was a very important step in Roman political history. Because of the Hortensian Law, patricians and plebeians became equal in political rights. The old struggle of the orders was seen as finished. The plebeians had won a place in Roman public life. However, equality in law did not mean that all people had the same life. Rich people still had more power than poor people. The nobiles still controlled many offices and much land. Women, slaves, and people who were not citizens did not have the same political rights as male Roman citizens. Still, the Roman Republic had changed greatly. It had moved away from rule by kings. It had also moved away from a system in which only patricians had political power. More citizens could now take part in public affairs. While Rome was changing its government, it was also growing in Italy. Rome fought many wars against nearby peoples. It fought other Latin cities, hill peoples, Etruscans, and groups from the south. War was a normal part of Roman life. Roman citizens were expected to serve in the army. A farmer might leave his field and become a soldier. After the war, he might return home and work again. Because the army was made up of citizens, military service was closely linked to political rights. Rome also built roads. Roads helped the army move quickly. They helped leaders send messages. They helped traders carry goods. They also connected Rome to the lands that it controlled. One famous road was the Appian Way. The Appian Way was built in the 4th century BCE. It was one of the oldest and most important Roman roads. It connected Rome with southern Italy. The Appian Way was named after Appius Claudius Caecus, a Roman leader. He helped begin the road. The road was made strong so that people, animals, carts, and soldiers could use it. Roman roads were often built with stone. They were made to last. The Appian Way helped Rome in war. Soldiers could march south more quickly. Food and tools could move with the army. It also helped trade. Farmers and shop owners could send goods from one place to another. A road is more than a line on land. It can bring people together. It can also help a powerful state control faraway places. The Appian Way helped Rome become stronger in the Italian peninsula. In southern Italy, there were many Greek cities. Long before Rome became strong, Greek people had crossed the sea and made colonies there. A colony is a new town made by people who come from another place. These Greek cities had Greek language, Greek temples, Greek art, and Greek trade. One important Greek city in southern Italy was Tarentum. Tarentum was rich and strong. It was near the sea and had a good harbor for ships. The people of Tarentum had close links with the Greek world. Rome and Tarentum came into conflict. Rome was growing south. Tarentum wanted to protect its own land and trade. Tarentum asked for help from Pyrrhus, a king from Epirus in the Greek world. Pyrrhus came to Italy with an army. He brought soldiers, horses, and elephants. The elephants were new and frightening to many Roman soldiers. Pyrrhus won some battles against Rome, but he lost many of his own men. A victory that cost too much is sometimes called a Pyrrhic victory. This name comes from Pyrrhus. He won battles, but the cost was so high that he could not easily continue the war. Rome had many citizens and could make new armies. In the end, Rome became stronger than Tarentum and its allies. In 272 BCE, Rome conquered Tarentum. With this victory, Rome controlled southern Italy. Rome had now united almost all of the Italian peninsula under its power. Rome did not rule every city in exactly the same way. This was one reason why it could control a large area. Rome used a system called divide and rule. Divide and rule means giving different rights and duties to different cities and peoples. Some cities became Roman citizens. Their people had many rights, such as the right to vote in Roman meetings. Other cities had some rights, but not all rights. Some cities had to give soldiers to Rome. Some had to pay money. Some could rule themselves in local matters, but they had to obey Rome in war and foreign affairs. This system made it hard for the conquered cities to join together against Rome. One city might have better rights than another city. One city might hope to get more rights by staying loyal to Rome. Because their situations were different, they did not always act together. Rome also made alliances. An alliance is an agreement between states or peoples to help each other. Rome made many alliances with Italian cities. But these alliances were not always equal. Rome was usually the stronger side. The allied cities had to send soldiers when Rome went to war. This gave Rome a very large army. Rome could call on not only Roman citizens, but also allies from many parts of Italy. This military system helped Rome win wars again and again. The people of Rome learned important lessons from their early history. They learned to fear kings. They learned to use short terms for important offices. They learned to share power between two consuls. They learned to use the Senate for long plans and advice. They also learned that common people could not be ignored. The plebeians showed that soldiers, farmers, and workers were important to the state. When the plebeians left the city or refused to fight, the patricians had to listen. The tribune of the plebs became a symbol of protection for ordinary citizens. The veto became a powerful tool. It showed that one official could stop an unfair action. The plebeian assembly gave common people a place to make decisions. The law of the 12 tables showed the value of written law. Laws should not be secret knowledge for a small group. People should be able to know the rules that control their lives. This idea became one important part of Roman culture. The Canulaeus law showed that social walls could change. Patricians and plebeians were once kept apart in marriage. Later, they could become one family. This change made the old difference between the groups less strict. The Licinian Sextian laws showed that the highest offices could open to new people. A plebeian could become consul. This did not end the power of rich families, but it gave more people a path into leadership. The Hortensian Law showed that the voice of the plebeian assembly mattered. Its decisions became laws for all Romans. This was the final major step in the long struggle for political rights between patricians and plebeians. The Roman Republic was not perfect. It did not give equal rights to every person. Rich men had more power than poor men. Women could not vote or hold public office. Enslaved people had no political rights. People outside Rome often had fewer rights than Roman citizens. But the Roman Republic was important because it created ways to limit power. It had consuls with 1-year terms. It had 2 consuls instead of 1 king. It had the Senate, assemblies, tribunes, and written laws. Different groups had different jobs and powers. This system could be slow. Many people had to meet, talk, vote, and agree. Sometimes rich leaders controlled the system. Sometimes the Senate and the tribunes fought each other. Still, the system helped Rome rule itself for many years. Rome's growth in Italy was also important. At first, Rome was only one small city near the Tiber River. It was ruled by Etruscan kings. Later, it became a republic. Then it fought wars, built roads, made alliances, and conquered cities. By 272 BCE, Rome had united the Italian peninsula. This did not mean that all people felt the same or had the same rights. Many people still had their own languages, customs, and local leaders. But Rome was now the strongest power in Italy. Rome used roads like the Appian Way to connect the land. It used armies made of citizens and allies. It used divide and rule to stop conquered cities from becoming one enemy force. It used different rights and duties to keep control. The story of early Rome is the story of a small city becoming stronger. It is also the story of people asking for fairer laws and more rights. The patricians wanted to keep their old power. The plebeians wanted to be heard. Over many years, Rome changed because of this struggle. The Latins began as one people among many in the Italian peninsula. The Etruscans helped shape early Rome. The Romans drove out the Etruscan king in 509 BCE and made a republic. Then the republic slowly changed as the plebeians won more rights. The consul, the senate, the dictator, the tribune of the plebs, the centuriate assembly, and the plebeian assembly were all parts of Roman government. Each part had a different role. Together they made the Roman Republic. The law of the 12 tables, the Canuleius law, the Licinian Sextian laws, and the Hortensian law were important steps in the growth of Roman law and rights. They did not make every person equal, but they changed Rome in important ways. The Appian Way showed Rome's skill in building and planning. Tarentum showed Rome's growing power in the south. Divide and rule showed Rome's skill in controlling many different cities and peoples. From a small city by the Tiber River, Rome became the leader of the Italian peninsula. Its government, laws, army, roads, and alliances helped it grow. Later, Rome would fight even larger wars and rule lands far from Italy. But the base of Roman power was built in these early years.